It's one bad thing on being late on a fantastic day like this. It's first, everyone will compare me with the excellent speakers before me, and then also all the smart people during the morning has already said everything. So I will repeat some stuff that has been talked about during this fantastic day. And of course, everyone talked about it. The future is already here. We have artificial intelligence, virtual reality, robotics in farming. Down in the corner, you see the first drone taxi that is launched in Dubai. I would never sit in such a thing, but still, it will replace taxi drives in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. And here we have the first printer that prints houses in 12 hours with plumbing and electricity. And I saw an interview with the professor from the US that has designed this machine or 3D printer, and he said, he got the question, what will happen with construction workers? And the professor said they need to get educated and do something else because this will take out construction workers in the future. So I think we are living in an era of exponential change. We have heard the word exponential during the day several times. But my view is that for the first time in history, these three forces are acting simultaneously. We have exponential growth in the performance of computational capacity. We have exponential growth in the amount of data artificial intelligence, big data analytics can analyze. And also we have exponential growth in the speed of the networks. This together with that we're coming into a stage where we have more or less ubiquitous reach. By 2021, 300 million people on this planet will live outside mobile coverage. That doesn't mean everyone will use a smartphone, but all people on this planet, except 300 million people, will have the ability to use a smartphone. And that means also that we, sooner or later, with Internet of Things, we will be able to reach all things on this planet. And also with digitalization and cloud, more and more business practices and everyday practices are digitized and can be reached through a mobile network or a fixed network in the cloud. And also we have now entering, as we heard the earlier speaker, a new economics, because the cost of reaching an end user or a thing is reaching the stage of zero. Transaction costs are reaching the point of zero as well. And the capabilities that you need to have to run your company is also getting dirt cheap. My son, he's 20 years old now, but a couple of years ago he studied the business administration. He made a startup as an assignment, thank God only in theory, but then he needed to make his business case. And for $199 US, he gets 16 business practices from Amazon Web Services per year. That means that anyone can start innovating, anyone can more or less start a company, and that is why we see lots of disruption and lots of change now. Because what's happening is that technology is developing exponentially. Startups are using the latest technology, and so far they have used it to add services to us as individuals and consumers. And large companies, the old companies, have problems on handling the technological development. They cannot leapfrog. They have invested in legacy IT systems, so they are lagging behind and they see businesses diminishing. And also public policy, governments, regulators cannot either cope with this technological development and the speed of it. So they don't know how to regulate Uber, or should they ban Airbnb because we see side effects of it that is extremely negative. And also the discussion we had during the morning, how do you create a social contract on technological development and especially artificial intelligence? Who can create such a social contract? So we see lots of changes in the marketplace. So when I talk to old companies, which I do most of the time, I say this to the board members and so on. Don't ask, will it happen at all? Instead, you should ask, what is most likely to happen first? When will it happen? How will it happen? And who will be affected by it? Because now we are living in this era of exponential change. And I know you have seen these pictures. Everyone is using them. I've used them for hundreds of years. But the first way of digital that we have experienced, this is probably the best pictures that illustrates the speed of change. Vatican City, new Pope to be announced. Everyone is waiting for the white smoke coming out from the chimney. I'm happy to, in the bottom right corner, we see a Sony Ericsson Z300 using a 0.2 megapixel camera to take a picture of it. 8 years later, same thing happened. New Pope was to be announced, and this is what they photographed. And it's not candid, so everyone now is using iPads, mobile phones, and experiencing more or less reality through a screen. And I think just 8 years, we as individuals have adopted a technology that no one could foresee. 2005, a thing happened to me. I was driving together with my son that was 7 years old at that time, 2005. It's a 4-hour drive in Sweden. And after some 30 minutes, my son was sitting in the back seat of the car. He was bored, so he picked up his portable gaming device and started to press buttons. And then he said this to me, "Daddy, where is the Wi-Fi?" And remember, this is 2005. And I was quite puzzled by the question, so I said, "Son, are you stupid or what? We don't have Wi-Fi in the car." And then he said this to me, "Daddy, you're working for Ericsson and you don't have Wi-Fi in the car." And then he ended, "You're such a loser." And if I would have understood what he actually said is that he was more or less the first generation growing up in a totally connected society. So he expected connectivity everywhere. And not just for the mobile phone or voice calls, but he wanted data connectivity and connectivity wherever he was on different devices. If I would have understood that, then I could have forecasted 2013, but I didn't do that. So, and no one else in the industry forecasted how huge the impact of mobile phones and smartphones would be. And of course, 10 years ago, the smartphone came, and it changed everything to us as consumers. Because it changed our lifestyle, and we heard, and you know, all these brands, but more or less all sectors that geared towards a consumer market was affected by the new logic on mobile phones. Transport, traveling, payments, finance, shopping, employment, education, etc. Enabled by technology, embraced by our consumers because we liked the convenience of having services at our fingertips, evident more or less in all sectors of society towards a consumer market, and also now starts to affect rules and regulations. Because in EU they are discussing, should we ban Uber or should we adopt the Uber model on handling transport systems? Because it's much more sustainable, it's much more efficient than the old taxi driver system. So it's starting to blur, and the impact is quite big. And of course, we also created some strange behaviors. I don't know how Hillary Clinton feels like looking at all the backs of people instead of looking at their faces. And of course, social media heavily impacted us and our behavior. And sometimes I feel that with Facebooks and so on, it's more like we are alone together, because I feel that more and more people are actually feeling alone, even if they are extremely active on Facebook. And this is also another picture from that my son took. With broadband TV, he doesn't want to own content. He wants access to experiences. He likes Premier League, so today he can watch 4 games at the same time. It gives me a bloody headache because I'm too old for this, but still he and his friends really love the opportunity to watch 4 games at the same time. So what technology so far has done is much more empowered lifestyle situation. Our digital relations and identity is handled by digital services. We have a generation growing up that wants everything instant. Thanks to services like Wikipedia, etc., they feel that they are always informed because they can reach information, they can reach knowledge wherever they are. And also, they start to prefer services instead of owning physical products. But what gives me hope is that I think on a global level, our culture is much more defined by collaboration now. And not only collaborating, lending out cars or apartments, but we are sharing information and we are sharing knowledge in a way that we never done earlier. And I think that gives high hope for the survival of this planet. So what we see now is a networked individual. We can download, we can stream, we can search and access information, we can datafy and connect with virtual personas, we can have peer reviews and search and buy. The problem is that this networked individual is meeting an organizational structure like this. And I think even if this is a faked organizational structure, this could be Ericsson, this could be any old company on the left side. And what we see, efficiencies that we have experienced as individuals, now we see much more networked businesses in the startup community, in the digital companies that can create much more value from less resources, much more agile and much more efficient. And research indicates that networked businesses' organizational structure is 10 times more efficient than the old one. Because in the old one, people are sitting and protecting their boxes, while in the network business, we are utilizing the power of connectivity and the power of networking in a way that was not possible earlier. So one conclusion is that we are using an industrial age approach to work in a digital world. We are more or less running organizations on MS-DOS, but it's 2017 now. It's time for an upgrade. And I think lots of old companies are struggling how to upgrade their organization. How should they understand digital? And as we heard earlier this morning, it's not about digital tools, it's about a digital mindset and being digital instead of buying new tools and Yammer and so on. And this is only the start. External sources think that 85% of the consumer relationships will be digital by 2020. 80% of business processes will be reinvented or eliminated by digital by 2020. And we see already today that in some industries, more than 50% of the revenues are created by digital. And this will happen in industry after industry. The media industry is already more than 50% of the revenues digital. People are not buying CD records or DVDs any longer. They are using digital services. Now we are entering what I call the second wave of digital. So far we have connected places with fixed internet. We have connected people with the mobile internet. Interactions and transactions are digital. With now the emergence of Internet of Things, we will connect things. And when we start to connect things, then business execution will be handled by digital. And that will transform industries. And this second wave is much, much stronger than the first wave that we have seen so far. Because this will change company organizations, business processes, business models, industrial structure in a major way. And of make some advertisement from Ericsson. Last year we had 27 6.3 gigabit in the mobile networks. I don't know what we will use it for, but we are developing an extremely capable network now that will have coverage and much lower latency and will cater for billions and billions of devices. I have done, together with Imperial College, a study interviewing 250 C-level people. And this is just some indications. 40% of the C-level people that we interviewed think that digital will change their business model completely or have massive impact on their current business model. 67% thinks IoT will impact their business the next coming 3 years. 71% sees digital change industrial structures and profit pools. So we are aware of the impact of the second wave. The problem is we don't know how to cope with it, because 68% thinks digital will change the organizational structure the next coming 3 years. And that is the tricky part, as we heard this morning, changing both the structure as well as the culture. Because one key lesson is that digital does not respect any boundaries. So regardless of industry, digital will always uncover inefficiencies and create value. Just like Uber took away the inefficiencies with the taxi system and created value for the end user, this will happen in all industries. A couple of years ago, I met a mining company and they said, "You're talking bullshit." And now they are a partner to us, looking at how digital technology will affect their mining business. And what we see is that a new logic is emerging. So one rule that we see is that anything that can be connected will be connected, and then it becomes smart and interactive. The medicine box you see there, it's a fantastic innovation. It's a connected medicine box. It's developed for people with Alzheimer's disease. That's the world's most expensive disease. If you take the cost for Alzheimer's disease and translate that to GDP, it will be the 18th biggest country in the world. When you have Alzheimer's disease, extremely important that you take your medicine on time. So what this box does, it's following the scheme of taking your medicine. If the patient hasn't taken your medicine within 5 minutes after 12 o'clock, for example, then the box starts to glow and beep. If you haven't taken your medicine on time after 10 minutes, then the box sends a text message to a doctor or a relative that can call up the patient, "Please take your medicine." The accuracy of taking your medicine on time goes from 56% to 94%. Extreme relief and good for the patient, good for society. And the business model is that this medicine is extremely expensive. So when you start to run out of medicine, it automatically orders medicine from the pharmacy, which takes down the supply chain cost with 22.7%. And there they make money. And also we are connecting rainforest. We use old phones that are listening to chainsaw sound, and then a peer-to-peer network, and then it can warn for illegal harvesting of rainforest, for example. So I think we can create so much fantastic services, not only by connecting, because connecting a thing is extremely important, but to think pain points and also to think that every product is a digital service waiting to happen. So we must be much better in creating services, understanding pain points, from the Alzheimer's disease patient to the rainforest, and then how can we utilize connectivity to create services that are good for society, good for patients, and also brings new money. Another logic, we heard that from the former speaker, any resource that can be shared will be shared. And when it's shared, it gets enriched and abundant. And of course, car sharing, like Car2Go, the shortest time you can rent a Car2Go is 1 minute. I have interviewed subscribers of Car2Go. They sold their car, They never found any problems of finding a car-to-go car when they needed a car. They don't have to take care of insurance, parking fees, etc. So they feel liberated by having a car sharing service. And just reflecting, I live 60 kilometers from my office. My car I use for 1.5 hours per day. That's not sustainable. That is not efficient from a societal point of view. But when we start to connect them and we can start sharing them, then we can do some fantastic stuff. Another third rule or hypothesis that has emerged is that any reshaping idea that can be tried will be tried and trigger change, even if it fails. 10 years ago, the US government gathered the smartest people in the US with the work assignment, say or identify things that cannot be replaced by robots or AI. And they thought for a while, and then they came up with driving a car. It's too complex. Now everyone has self-driving car, and also more and more car manufacturers are seeing that self-driving car as a service might be much better, that we don't own our own cars, but we subscribe to self-driving car as a service. Usually when I say that in the US, mid-aged white people gets pressure over their chest, not owning my car, but I think the next generation will see a self-driving car as a service as a quite natural development. And they have made simulations in Paris and Singapore. If you have a self-driving car as a service, you can take care of Paris mobility need with 80% less cars, which is fantastic for the environment, but of course quite disruptive for car manufacturers, because now they need to think about how will I survive in the future when my core business is out? What kind of new digital business do I need to create to survive as a company? So technologies like Internet of Things, 5G, artificial intelligence, robotics are changing the landscape of markets. And we see also blurring lines between who is competitor, who is collaborator, and who is my customer. We have heard lots about that during this fantastic day, but I think this needs to be talked about in boardrooms with top management to see how can we make our company much more digital and how will new technologies affect my business. Because what the next wave is about is that information and communication technology will be, or digital will be, the platform for new industrial structures. We need to move from siloed transport things to a much more intelligent transport system. For this planet's survival, we need to move from large-scale centralized energy production to a smart energy system that is much more distributed. Farming will be connected farming, healthcare much more interactive and individualized healthcare, and of course Industry 4.0 with cyber-physical systems. And then I think most companies need to think about where does digital play a role in my current offering and where should I invest for the future. Lots of companies are looking how digital can create better performance of current offering, just looking for efficiencies. Or the car manufacturers that doesn't want to change the car market, but they want to use digital and connectivity to improve the offering to current market. And then, as we heard a couple of minutes ago, the platform companies that are looking for synergy offerings across different industries. And then the hard part, being disruptive and utilizing it on market mechanisms, create a new market. Just like Spotify created the market for streaming music, just like Netflix created the market for streamed movies, Volvo or other car manufacturers, when they create self-driving car as a service, they have created a new market that is today non-existent. So I think we need to analyze in which of the quadrants do we want to play in this matrix, where do we play first, and what's the next step. Because what we are moving in with 5G and the next generation infrastructure is that we are moving from infrastructure today to what we call infrastructure tomorrow. Not only mobile, app revolution, social networks, etc., but now, tomorrow we will have pervasive data access, thanks to Internet of Things, thanks to the capable networks. We will execute business much more digitally and potentially automated. Mobile networks will not only be about connectivity because it will have artificial intelligence and machine learning built into the infrastructure. Blockchain technology, Internet of Things, automation and smart robotics. And that changes the landscape for what we can do, both from a societal point of view as well as a business point of view. Because that changes the strategic landscape. We have huge opportunities for society to deliver radically new services to the smart city, to smart agriculture. We have huge business opportunities to make new services coming alive. And also we have opportunities on supporting the people, just like the Alzheimer's patient. But we have also challenges as enterprises, as individuals, as society. How will we cope with the technological development? And how can we create a social contract with technology of tomorrow? Because digital now is creating a new playing field. And that gives me hope, because we have 10 times, or not maybe hundreds more times more innovators, because anyone can more or less innovate and create digital services to a tenth of the cost. And with the coverage and the scaling of both cloud and mobile networks, it will have 100 times the impact, because we can reach all people except 300 million by 2021. So what I try to advise companies is 7 principles to handle digital. Fight fire with fire. Embrace the threat instead of saying it will not happen. It's not related to me. Embrace it and understand it and play around with it. Start to disrupt yourself, because if you don't disrupt yourself, someone else will do it, and that will hurt you much more. And then, thanks to digital, maybe you have new assets that suddenly has become connected that could be extremely important in your business development. Focus on value and not organizational structure. What value do you bring, not to yourself, but to the market? And then rethink your core businesses. John Deere, the CEO of Bob Lane, he said a couple of years ago, we don't make tractors any longer. We are making sophisticated mobile information factories. It still looked like a tractor, but that was to redefine what kind of business John Deere is in, to make precision farming, agriculture that is connected with sensors, etc. And then also, I think lots of companies has a tendency on staring in the mirror, looking at history, what made us successful. I give the suggestion, focus on the future instead. And then, as we heard, platform engagement. Open up your enterprise, open up your company for others to create value, because that will bring value back to you as well. And also, I think visions about the future is important. And I think either you lead a digital business industry vision that you have created, or you are led by a vision that someone else has created. The latter is not that nice. And also, as we have heard during the day, experiment, fail, learn from it, because trying something always costs less than not trying anything. So start experimenting, small-scale experiments, learn from it if it fails, but doing nothing is not an option today. And then I will end up with, even if we talked about digital, the future, etc., I think Mahatma Gandhi was a bright guy, and he said the future depends on what you do today. So we need to start now and not wait for it. Thank you very much.
Hello. Thank you. I'm sure that there are questions.
Everyone wants a coffee instead.
Yeah, I guess so. Okay, so until they think, one very short question from me. If you're a company, okay, and you're trying to adapt, you're trying to go to the digital age and so on.
Yes.
Okay, what can you do about technologies that are not synchronized? For example, we are talking about autonomous cars, but the battery is lasting for, I don't know, 100 kilometers. Or we're talking about advanced and very powerful smartphones at the battery staying at, I don't know, 6 hours of usage. So.
No, but I think, for example, batteries in cars, you can drive 1,000 kilometers on a battery now. So the not exactly. I tried one. It was deemed 400 kilometers, and when you're pushing it hard, it's like the average consumption for a normal car, which they say 5, but in reality it's 10. But even if a Tesla car goes fast, you should not. You should take it carefully. No, but I think every technology, like the smartphones, when you introduce new processors and so on, it's not optimized the power consumption. I have an iPhone. I always carry with an extra battery. It's a problem. I think the consumers are getting fed up with it. So I think there's lots of focus among the big mobile phone manufacturers to actually optimize the battery consumption. But I think sometimes companies release technology too fast and it doesn't give a good user experience. But I think what we are entering a stage where actually the different technologies are starting to get synchronized to a certain extent. So. Which is both extremely good but also quite scary. Robotics together with artificial intelligence, etc. And that is what I mean. We need to have a social contract, and I think the discussion on ethics and AI is one of the most important discussions, ethics and robotics as well. And also I think we cannot drive this development too far. In my old hometown in Sweden, a new car engine factory was opened, and the director for the plant, he was extremely happy walking around with the representatives for the union. 4 people, and then the rest is only robotics. And the CEO said, "Come on, Mr. Union Man, this is fantastic. No salary negotiations, 24/7, no vacations. This is paradise." And then the union guy said, "Yeah, and does those robots buy lots of cars?" So the question is, how far can we push efficiencies? How far can we utilize technology? Because sooner or later the market will disappear then. And then you have created nothing.
Okay, questions? Okay, if there are... Oh, here.
I would rather like to make a little comment on your example with the cars. And that example with the electric cars and not being very autonomous, maybe it's another example that can be solved by interconnectivity. For example, you might, instead of hanging on to your own battery, after you drive for 100 kilometers, you can let go of your battery and get a new one from the electric station.
Okay, you can do a lot of things actually, but these kind of examples can go on and on. For example, the speed of the internet in most of the cases, because you're in Ericsson, it's not synchronized with the power of applications.
No.
I've been to IFA this autumn, and I had huge difficulties in uploading. I was just a very small clip
Yep.
in 360. So.
No, and also I think what I showed with 5G, that's not a consumer broadband, it's an industrial broadband. So
Okay.
what we are doing
It's
is...
different.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
we are working extremely much with utility companies, car manufacturers, mining companies, factory constructors and so on to make our technology relevant, but also educate other industries. What will future networks be able to do? So, and that is to actually, to your point, to try to synchronize the development in a greater extent.
Thank you.